There's something right there. That is one weird looking board.
One moment, the History Channel was running its usual late-night reruns. The next, every screen snapped to a solid red alert. No teaser, no trailer, just a line of text that made the world stop scrolling. Confirmed discovery. Oak Island secret chamber opened. Within minutes, millions of people piled into the broadcast. The feed cut to the windy shoreline of Nova Scotia, floodlights cutting through the mist, drones humming overhead. It didn't look like a TV show anymore. It looked like a live emergency from another century. Down in the ground, a robotic crawler inched toward a set of stone doors that hadn't moved since the days of the Crusades. The hinges screamed as they gave way, revealing a hidden chamber deep under Oak Island. The camera followed the crawler inside, past dust that hadn't been disturbed for centuries, into a vaulted room carved with impossible precision. Across the ceiling, constellations were etched into the stone like a frozen map of the night sky. Arches rose overhead in perfect symmetry, aligned not just for beauty, but for some kind of star-locked purpose. Even Rick Lagina, who had spent decades chasing this mystery, could barely get the words out. His voice shook as he told viewers this discovery would change everything they thought they knew. Most people watching expected one thing: treasure, a chest, a few coins, maybe some old relics. But as the crawler rolled deeper into the darkness, it became obvious that they weren't looking at a simple hoard of gold. What lay beyond that first doorway wasn't just old, it was out of time. And the next thing the cameras found made everyone question whether the Knights Templar had been hiding wealth or technology. The deeper the crawler pushed, the stranger the chamber became. Instead of a pile of artifacts, the cameras revealed a wall of machinery pressed into the stone, like the skeleton of some ancient engine. Massive iron gears meshed with polished wooden wheels. Pulleys and counterweights hung from carved brackets. Pipes jutted from the rock, sealed in resin, as if someone had tried to keep pressure locked inside for centuries. None of it matched what historians expected from the 14th century. The engineering looked coordinated, almost industrial, like something out of an era that shouldn't exist yet. Levers were arranged not randomly, but in sequences, numbered, balanced, clearly meant to be pulled in a precise order. Whatever this vault was, it didn't look like a hiding place. It looked like a system. At the center of it all, the cameras picked up a faint, unnatural glow. It wasn't electric. There were no wires, no obvious power source. Instead, the light seemed to seep out of a core sealed in thick glass or crystal, pulsing slowly as if reacting to the fresh air for the first time in hundreds of years. Some on the crew whispered that it had to be alchemical, a chemical reaction designed to burn longer than any candle, left behind by minds who understood elements in a way nobody gave them credit for. The room felt less like a vault and more like a locked machine, waiting for the right combination to wake it up. A lever was finally pulled. Metal clanged against stone. Somewhere in the rock, a counterweight dropped, and the entire chamber groaned. A second passage split open in the wall, and this time, what waited on the other side was exactly what the legends had promised, and also the biggest misdirection anyone had ever seen.
When the second chamber opened, the floodlights hit something everyone could understand in a single heartbeat: raw wealth. Crates, sealed with wax and bound in iron, were stacked to the ceiling like they'd been packed by soldiers, not monks. Workers pried one open, the old seals cracking after centuries in the dark, and the contents spilled out across the stone floor in a blinding cascade. Gold bars clattered like bricks, stacked with military precision. Under the cameras, they glowed with that unmistakable, heavy shine, each one polished, stamped, and still impossibly sharp around the edges. Experts whispering into headsets were already throwing out numbers. They estimated that what was visible in that room alone couldn't be worth less than $250 million. And that didn't even count what might still be buried under the piles. Coins followed, crashing out of chests in glittering avalanches. Byzantine, Moorish, Spanish. A timeline of empires spilling out in seconds. Jewel-studded chalices rolled away from broken lids. Crowns and crosses encrusted with emeralds and sapphires lay tangled together like a dragon's hoard, brought to life under the harsh white lights. Viewers at home were staring at the kind of treasure people spend their lives dreaming about. But the longer the cameras lingered, the more the room stopped feeling like a jackpot and started feeling like bait. Some of the bars weren't marked with royal crests or mint stamps at all. Instead, they carried strange sigils, coded markings that didn't match any known currency. It was as if the gold wasn't meant to be spent, but read. Behind the walls of bullion, in the shadows that the floodlights almost missed, something else waited. Iron boxes, sealed tight and stacked with eerie precision, were half buried behind the gold, not displayed, but hidden. The message was subtle but chilling. The treasure was there to distract you. Whatever mattered most was locked away behind it. When the crew finally dragged those boxes into the open and cracked their ancient seals, they didn't find gemstones or relics inside. They found bundles wrapped in oilskin, perfectly dry and preserved, like someone had expected them to survive not just time, but a planned rediscovery. The real treasure wasn't metal at all, it was information.
Under the floodlights, gloved hands unrolled the first of the manuscripts on a temporary table set up right there on the stone floor. The parchment didn't crumble. It flexed, as if it had only been sealed away decades ago, not hundreds of years in the past. Edge to edge, the first scroll was covered in tight Aramaic script, lines of text that read like whispers from the early days of Christianity. Experts on site murmured that the passages referred to gospels no official church had ever admitted existed. On another sheet, Latin prayers intertwined with diagrams, complex mechanisms with wings, fortresses crowned with rotating turrets, machines sketched centuries before any blueprint like that should have appeared. A third manuscript was covered in Greek letters and star-based calculations, describing alignments and positions that no one could fully decode in the moment. It felt less like a religious archive and more like a technical manual for a civilization that had fused faith, astronomy, and engineering into one guarded system. Then came the document that changed the tone of the entire room. From a smaller iron chest, a thicker codex slid free, its cover darkened with age, but still held together by straps and a chunk of red wax that had somehow stayed intact. Pressed into that wax was a symbol the scholars recognized instantly, the papal seal of Clement V, the very pope who had dissolved the Knights Templar under pressure from the French throne. That seal turned a treasure hunt into a political grenade. Why would the insignia of the Pope most responsible for dismantling the Templars appear on a hidden codex in a Nova Scotian vault? Was this proof that Clement hadn't simply destroyed the order, but quietly worked with them to preserve documents that were never meant to see daylight again? On live microphones, specialists were already struggling to explain what this could mean. If the texts inside that codex contained banned gospels, buried orders, or blueprints for technology centuries ahead of its time, they wouldn't just tweak the edges of church history, they could undermine it. And just as the world began to process that possibility, Oak Island itself started to respond in a way no one expected. While teams cataloged the manuscripts below, the instruments above ground began to lose their minds. Sensitive equipment placed around Oak Island started registering anomalies that didn't match any normal geological activity. Seismographs picked up low-frequency tremors, but there were no quakes in the region. Compass needles began spinning slowly in circles, refusing to lock on to north, as if the island's magnetic field had suddenly shifted. A technician watching vibration data from the bedrock reported something even stranger, a slow, repeating pulse running through the island, like a heartbeat in stone. The more they monitored it, the more it looked like the entire chamber system had been designed to resonate, to send a signal when disturbed. Inside the vault, the unease grew thicker by the minute. Some crew members swore they heard voices echoing faintly through the rock. Not clean words, not radio feedback, but a low, rhythmic chant that seemed to hover just beyond understanding. Some thought it sounded like Old French, others insisted it was Latin, but everyone agreed on one thing. It felt active, not like a memory. Rick Lagina tried to write it off as interference from the equipment bouncing around the stone walls, but Rick stood there, pale and locked in, listening with a focus that unsettled even his closest friends. He quietly told the others, this didn't feel like noise. It felt intentional, a warning system built into the architecture itself. The old curse of Oak Island, long dismissed as just folklore, started to look less like superstition and more like design. The chamber didn't just guard treasure, it reacted, it pushed back, and then the threat stopped being symbolic. Under the moonlight offshore, unmarked boats appeared on the horizon, gliding in with their navigation lights off. Drones nobody recognized started hovering at the edge of the dig site. Dark-clad silhouettes watched through night vision optics from a distance, close enough to observe, far enough to avoid confrontation. Messages began slipping into the expedition's communication channels. Photos, fragments of documents, warnings from sources that refused to identify themselves. One encoded note was so serious that someone physically slipped the paper into camp. When it was translated, it said, in essence, "You opened what was never yours to open." It wasn't a negotiation, it was a claim. The treasure, the relics, the manuscripts, all of it, the message insisted, belonged to a lineage of guardians who had watched Oak Island for generations. Their duty wasn't to own the hoard, it was to keep it out of everyone's hands. And someone else, far more powerful than a TV audience or a small team of diggers, was now about to step in. The pressure didn't stop at Nova Scotia's shoreline. Within days, the leaks went global. Photos of the manuscripts, fragments of translations, and images of certain relics began surfacing far beyond the expedition's control. And those images hit one place harder than anywhere else: the Vatican. Historians in Rome, confronted with documents they could no longer pretend not to recognize, quietly admitted something staggering. Some of the Oak Island texts had already been described centuries ago in secret church inventories, quietly cataloged and locked inside the Vatican archives. The find itself didn't shock them. The fact that the world was seeing it did. Relics unearthed beneath Canadian soil matched descriptions buried in old papal registers. Chalices taken from the Holy Land during the Crusades. Reliquaries said to hold fragments of unnamed saints. Manuscripts sealed during the exact years the Templars were being hunted down. The Guardian's warnings suddenly had hard proof behind it. These weren't random treasures. They were pieces of a controlled collection. When the Pope finally addressed the situation, his statement was broadcast worldwide. But instead of naming the gold, the codices, or the star maps, he spoke vaguely about great care in dealing with discoveries that touch on sacred heritage. It was so carefully worded that it sounded less like comfort and more like a coded instruction. He neither denied nor confirmed anything. Then Rome went completely silent. Meanwhile, researchers analyzing the manuscripts on Oak Island made a discovery that blew the story wide open. Folded between pages they thought were purely religious, they found maps, star maps. The diagrams overlaid constellations across the Atlantic like a web. When modern coordinates were laid on top, they revealed a network of triangles, connecting Oak Island to Portugal, Jerusalem, and even deep into South America. It didn't look like simple trade routes, it looked like a grid. Some scholars pointed out that the pattern mirrored the so-called ley lines that mystics had whispered about for years. Invisible channels of natural energy said to run across the planet. If the maps were authentic, the Templars hadn't just hidden one vault, they had built a network of them, placed at key points along this geometric web. Oak Island, in other words, was just one node in a planetary system of hidden chambers, relics, and dangerous knowledge. If even a fraction of that network still existed, whoever controlled it wouldn't just have wealth, they'd hold leverage over history, faith, and maybe even the way we understand the planet itself. And once that idea hit the mainstream, the reaction was immediate.
News outlets pounced. Banners flashed across screens. World's largest treasure hoard found. Oak Island discovery shakes history. Templar Vault exposes hidden church secrets. The story jumped from a quirky mystery show to a global event overnight. On social media, hashtags erupted. Hashtag Oak Island Treasure. Hashtag Templar Gold. Hashtag Vatican Vault. Conspiracy threads argued the bull bars weren't currency at all, but coded keys in a system meant to activate once enough vaults in the network were opened. Others claimed Oak Island was the seed vault of a centuries-old plan for a new world order. While the internet spiraled, the financial world flinched. Just knowing a confirmed $250 million in hidden gold existed was enough to make markets twitch. Analysts warned that if similar vaults were proven real, they could flood global reserves and crash the value of traditional bullion.
quietly. Hedge funds and big investors began shifting portfolios. Some moved toward digital assets and cryptocurrencies, not because they were suddenly noble, but because physical gold now carried a new kind of risk. How stable could any metal be if more secret hoards might be waiting under someone else's feet? What started as an archaeological victory was mutating into economic nerves. Then came the muscle. Canadian naval ships ringed Oak Island, metal gray hulls cutting slow circles around the shore. Searchlights swept away journalists, locals, and private boats. Officials walked into the dig with binders full of legal orders, invoking heritage laws and salvage rights to claim the discovery for the state. The United States stepped in next, citing colonial ties and pressing for joint heritage claims. Diplomats argued in private. Lawyers flooded courts. Through it all, the Laginas were yanked into hearings they could never truly win, outmatched by governments and institutions that now saw the vault as leverage. Whispers spread of private elites offering vast sums to make select relics disappear into personal collections. Rick, normally calm on camera, finally snapped. "If this treasure disappears into secrecy," he said, "Oak Island's story dies." His words echoed online, but in the rooms where decisions were made, outrage didn't outweigh power. And just as it felt like the first chamber had created more chaos than anyone could control, the team found something that proved the real story was deeper still.
Beneath the already shocking vault, scanners picked up a narrow tunnel branching away from the main chamber. At first, it looked like a natural crack. Then the team realized the walls were too clean, the angle too deliberate. It wasn't an accident, it was engineered. Ground-penetrating radar tracked the tunnel farther than anyone expected, ending at another barrier. When they reached it, they found a door unlike anything else on the site, its surface coated in hardened layers of molten lead, as if someone had tried to fuse it shut forever. Carved into the front was a double-headed eagle, a symbol that had crossed empires from Byzantium to the Holy Roman Empire, later whispered about in the lore of secret societies. Scans suggested that whatever lay beyond that seal made the first treasure chamber look small. The space on the readouts was massive, a cavern that could hold not just more gold, but entire archives of relics, or something no broadcast was ready to explain. The vibrations rattling instruments across the island were strongest here, pulsing through the rock like the beat of a hidden engine. The cameras caught Marty staring at the door, tension written across his face. His voice was quiet, but certain. This wasn't the conclusion. They had only cracked the first lock. The world never saw that deeper barrier. What filtered out to the public was curated. Gold bars stacked neatly, chalices polished under glass, a few manuscripts rolled into sleeves. The $250 million haul became a headline and then a museum-ready narrative, while rumors claimed the most volatile codices vanished straight into restricted vaults in government basements or Rome. Through it all, the Laginas stood in the middle, praised by the public, pressured by authorities. Standing in the chamber that had devoured decades of his life, Rick's message shifted. The real treasure was never the gold, he said, staring toward the sealed tunnel. The real treasure was the secret. Who built this system, why they hid it, and what they were trying so hard to prevent. And that's the part that's still unresolved. Under Oak Island, a lead-sealed door hums with a resonance no one can fully explain. Above ground, governments argue, markets wobble, and the guardians, whoever they are, keep watching. The first vault dazzled the world, but the most important chamber is still sleeping. Waking it could tilt the balance between power, faith, and truth itself. If you want to follow how this mystery unfolds and dig into more buried chapters of our past just like this one, make sure you subscribe to Gold Era 2.0 so you don't miss the next discovery.